This is the exact moment Vice President J.D. Vance realized that the Iranian negotiating team was entirely snubbing him in Geneva, Switzerland. He doesn't really have a poker face. He can't hide how concerned he is. He looks like a deer in the headlights, and he is in over his head. Donald Trump is in over his head, but Trump has a sense to know that the United States is losing, has a weak hand, and that's why he sends VP Vance to go and do the dirty work and go put his entire reputation on the line. On the left is the moment that Ghalibaf, the negotiator for Iran, walks out, and then not long after, J.D. Vance decides to leave. It was total humiliation. It was asymmetric warfare in like social cues, in the sense that the Iranian team would not let themselves be seen with J.D. Vance on camera. They wouldn't talk to J.D. Vance. They were being quite petty in order to prove a point and string along the United States, therefore extracting as many concessions as possible. Vice President J.D. Vance then has the gall to get on stage in Lucerne, Switzerland, after this absolute disaster of a meeting and try to rationalize what just happened, try to spin what just happened. But we're not going to let him, Trump, Netanyahu, or any of these bad faith actors get away with the spin. If you appreciate us standing up for the truth, and if you want to join the community, make sure you drop a like and subscribe below. I appreciate every single one of you. Genuinely, thank you. And let's just start off with J.D. Vance's opening remarks in Switzerland. Notice how hard he begins to spin. Then we'll talk about how Donald Trump was quite literally nuking the meeting as it was happening. Trump was tweeting threats through the meeting, and those threats violated the Memorandum of Understanding. Take a look.
Yesterday was a very, very good day. We made a lot of good progress. We did exactly what we wanted to do, which is accomplish 4 things for the American people. First, we wanted to build a mechanism for keeping the Strait of Hormuz open. It is open. We've seen, of course, gas prices and oil prices come down, millions and millions of barrels of crude and natural gas flowing through the Strait of Hormuz that weren't flowing before. But we also wanted to make sure that we actually set up the coordination mechanism so that we could demine the Straits of Hormuz, so that when there are the conflicts that inevitably come up, we can make sure we work through them.
What type of humiliation ritual is this? Is this a fetish at this point? J.D. Vance went on Fox News just 2 days ago and declared the Strait of Hormuz open at about 9 a.m. Then, by 10 a.m., we learned the Strait of Hormuz was closed by the IRGC once again. I made a tweet about this, pointing out the timeline, and said it could not be more clear that the Trump admin has absolutely no control over the situation. J.D. Vance was then sent on yet another humiliation ritual, this time in the form of a trip to Geneva, Switzerland, where he got nothing, is bragging about nothing. Let me play you this clip from 2 days ago.
Jared and Steve have been on the ground now for a few hours, dealing with some of the technical elements of this negotiation. As you guys know, one of the things the president has set us out to do as a high priority is to open the straits. That's now happened. We actually got 16 million.
He said that's now happened. It did not. Within 1 hour, it was closed down again. Now J.D. Vance just went on a fruitless trip over to Lucerne, Switzerland, and I want to show you this clip of him being asked about Donald Trump uprooting the negotiation while it was happening. Just for a recap, Donald Trump has been posting like a madman, obviously, throughout his entire political career, but over the past few months, increasingly so. Part of the Memorandum of Understanding that Iran and the United States agreed to was that there would be no threats of violence on social media or over video. Donald Trump just broke that MOU. Another clause said that Israel had to pull its forces out of southern Lebanon. They've already broken that clause, Israel and the United States. So if you just think about it, Iran intentionally put these clauses in the memorandum because they know that Trump and Israel aren't going to follow through, and then they're trying to string Trump along for maximum concessions by reclosing the straits. I mean, it's a negotiation tactic on their behalf, and Trump doesn't know how to handle it. Trump said, while J.D. Vance was in the meeting, he said, Iran must immediately stop their highly paid proxies in Lebanon from causing trouble. If they don't, we'll hit Iran very hard again, just like we did last week, only harder. This was the very moment that J.D. Vance got snubbed because Trump was threatening the Iranians during the meeting. I just want you to look at his face.
How are the talks going so far, Mr. Vice President?
Ooh, that was brutal. I can't play this due to copyright, but look at his face right here. It's actually painful to watch. Genuinely painful to watch. Our Rizless vice president command zero respect and walk clumsily around. Okay, to continue, let me show you this clip of Vance being asked about Trump's tweet.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Did the president's threats yesterday really throw a wrench in negotiations. There were reports that the Iranians walked out at one point. Can you just clarify and tell us what happened?
No, they didn't throw a wrench in the system. The thing with the Iranians, yes, they did threaten to walk out, or at least there were social media threats that they would walk out. But we were negotiating well past 1 a.m. yesterday, so they didn't walk out. And their technical team is still here in Bergenstock working with our technical team actually as we speak, though I imagine maybe some of them are taking a break to watch this news conference. But look, what we told the Iranians yesterday is when you guys engage in what us millennials might call trash talk, you can't expect the President of the United States not to respond and not to correct the record. So when they say things that aren't true, the President is going to respond to it. I'm going to respond to it. Americans are going to respond to it.
I don't find this convincing at all. So J.D. Vance is trying to spin and say that everything actually went well, even though there's no progress whatsoever. And then J.D. Vance is going to say that Trump is actually just correcting the record. Iran must immediately stop their highly paid proxies in Lebanon. If they don't, we'll hit Iran very hard, just like we did last week, only harder. That's not correcting the record. That's directly making a threat, which if he wants to do that, then fine. But that is directly breaking the first clause of the Memorandum of Understanding, which says you cannot make public threats online. Let me show you this clip of Trey Gowdy talking to Mike Pence. And it's an interesting interaction. He says, the only time Trump's ever run out of patience is when he's on the golf course with me.
With our CIA director, John Ratcliffe. I've seen his patience run out with me on the golf course. I don't know if you've ever seen his patience run out, but that is not something the Iranians, I think, want to see. Mr. Vice President.
Did this guy get abused by Trump on a golf course? I don't understand. Also, Trump literally threatened to wipe out the entire Iranian civilization about 2 months ago. Is that not him losing his patience? So J.D. Vance then continues his speech in Lake Lucerne, Switzerland, trying to spin the meeting with which he got nothing from. He says in this clip he can't stay for the next 60 days, so he's heading back to the United States. What he's really trying to say is he got nothing. There's a 60-day, supposed ceasefire in this memorandum, but Israel immediately began to strike Lebanon. They're still occupying southern Lebanon, and at this very moment, Trump is breaking the clause that says you can't threaten them. So it's all undermining itself.
Those technical negotiations are going to continue over the weeks and days to come. We wanted to set up a structure for that so that you could have proper political oversight, but obviously, as much as this place is very beautiful, I can't stay here for the next 60 days. I'm about to go back home to the United States, but the technical teams are going to be working with proper oversight to make sure that we're accomplishing the objectives that matter for everybody.
Whenever they use the word oversight, it just reminds me that the JCPOA had like a multi-pronged clause and phase, where the first one was oversight from all of the Gulf countries and our allies and the United States to make sure they didn't enrich the uranium. They then had a secondary phase where we would go and we would have like in-person inspections. There were plans and phases for this, and Trump tore it up because he doesn't like Obama. There was really no good reason. So J.D. Vance then begins to go into what he said to the Iranians.
What we told the Iranians yesterday is when you guys engage in what us millennials might call trash talk, you can't expect the President of the United States not to respond and not to correct the record.
Was it trash talk when Trump said, I'm going to wipe out the entire civilization, never to be seen again? We keep seeing this push-pull, repeated threat of wiping out the civilization, then a humiliating climb down, and the real thing that's happening here. This is just the reality. Conservatives will say that I hate America, but I say this because I love America. I say this because I want America to be better, and I don't want us to be in failing wars. But the reality is the Iranians are trying to gain every little concession from this administration day after day by acting like we're on the verge of a deal, but then, making the deal contingent on Israel pulling its troops out of southern Lebanon, which just is not going to happen. Bibi does not have the incentive to do that. So now we're in this cyclical loop where Trump is making more and more and more concessions, and it's worse and worse and worse for us on the global stage. Here's JD talking about the Qataris.
As much as I see some of the press misreporting on this, and of course, buttressed by what the Iranians are saying, or not all Iranians, I want to be clear. There are a lot of Iranians who are telling the truth about what happened yesterday, but you see some social media reporting that gets this wrong. But fundamentally, what Jared and the Qataris and the entire team here in Bergenstock accomplished is, to me, a classic Trump deal, where if Iranian assets are ever unfrozen, they're going to go to make American farmers richer and to feed the Iranian people. That's a very, very good and very classic.
It is a classic Trump deal in a way. If a classic Trump deal is just declaring victory perpetually while never seeing any results and effing over every single person who actually worked on the deal, J.D. Vance is not going to have a political career after MAGA because he's tied himself to all of this. Here's J.D. Vance 5 days after Trump said he signed the final deal. He said he signed the final deal 5 days ago, saying, we're working on the final deal now.
The way that I think about it is very simple. We laid a very good foundation for a successful final deal. The final deal is the house. We set the foundation. We haven't built the house, but we've laid a successful foundation to get to a good place for the American people. I think it's important for all of us to appreciate how much was done, but honestly, there is still a lot to do as we continue to make progress on the nuclear talks, on the economic talks, as we continue to demine the straits and ensure that that flow of traffic continues to pick back up. A lot of progress, but still some work to do, and we're very committed to doing exactly that. The way that I think about it is...
Listen to the absolute spin here. The reality is, the United States is in a weak position when it comes to this war. We are failing. We are playing a weak hand, and we're playing that weak hand badly. And it's all a consequence of Trump effing this up from day one. Now, the United States has a stronger military than just about every country in the world, especially Iran. They're telling the truth when they say that we sunk Iran's Navy and their Air Force, but their Navy and their Air Force were 50, 60 years old. It wasn't an insane accomplishment, and they weren't a huge threat to us in the first place. However, Iran does have a weapon in the form of the Strait of Hormuz, which they can open and close, and they do have a weapon in the form of, the IRGC being able to dig its claws in and just survive. They're not held democratically accountable whatsoever. They're a regime. Donald Trump, however, will be either weaken during the midterms or eventually lose his political power as this goes on and on and on. So the Iranians are trying to survive, and our Gulf countries are quite frankly freaking out. They're all absolutely pissed at us because we started a war along with Israel that got our Gulf countries struck. Civilians died in these countries. Qatar, we basically spat in their face and just let them get hit, let our military base get hit. And now we're asking those same Gulf countries to get together $300 billion to invest in Iran, which will likely lead to more and more catastrophe down the road. The Trump admin is very hard on its allies and soft on its enemies. That is the fact, and that's what we're seeing right now. If you appreciate these videos on the Adam Mockler feed and you want to be around for more debate formats, more videos from our contributors as we build the team larger and larger, you can subscribe below. I appreciate each and every single one of you. Love you all. Peace out.